Critical Thinking and Self-Confidence. How to use critical thinking techniques to build your self-confidence. Written by Stephen West. Narrated by Raymond Lawrence. Chapter 1. What is critical thinking? It is important to start with defining in detail what critical thinking is beyond what you can simply search in Google, and provide some insight onto ideas and concepts that you may have not heard of or even considered before reading this ebook. That's the goal. Let's begin with the simple definition. Do you know the nonprofit organization, the Foundation for Critical Thinking? This amazing organization is a pioneer in helping create critical reform on education, and they are working hard towards marketing essential modifications in the current education system and in society by really pushing for inclusiveness and cultivation of everyone's ability to think critically. There is no other definition that comes close to defining critical thinking so thoroughly, but yet it's only a small fraction of the true meaning. Critical thinking is the intellectually disciplined process of actively and skillfully conceptualizing, applying, analyzing, synthesizing, and/or evaluating information gathered from or generated by observation, experience, reflection, reasoning, or communication as a guide to belief and action. In its exemplary form, it is based on universal intellectual values that transcend subject matter divisions. Clarity, accuracy, precision, consistency, relevance, sound evidence, good reasons, depth, breadth, and fairness. That's pretty deep, right? I thought so too. So let's break this down a bit. This is the fun part. What are the types of information that we encounter on a daily basis? Let's face it, Fred Flintstone had it truly easy. He simply picked up his car and ran off to wherever he needed to go. Zoom! A pterodactyl would deliver the slab of a newspaper. People actually went outside and talked to their neighbors, and they did normal activities and sports like bowling. Those are the good old days, right? In today's information age, we literally have an unlimited supply of information and sources of information. Think about it. We get information from television, papers at work, cell phones, social media, video games, newspapers, magazines, the internet, our children, our spouses, our pets, our family, our heroes, our role models, our enemies, our food, our doctors, our lawyers. I think you get the point. We wear several hats during the day, all of which require us to not only take in information in a different way, but also spit it back out, if you will. We are literally walking computers if you think about it, and you even dive into the true meaning of this definition of critical thinking that you have read earlier. We take in information, we analyze it, we act on it or discard it, and we move on to the next piece of data. The major difference is that a computer has only one source of incoming information, and that is you, the user. We, the supercomputers that we are, have millions of sources of information. The other major difference is how we process that information differently than a computer. That's where critical thinking comes in. I mention this because it's important to understand not just what critical thinking is, but also to take a step back before you simply apply a definition to your everyday life. That first starts with understanding and learning about how your brain works, which helps you understand our human vulnerabilities and prowess. Vulnerabilities and prowess of the human brain. It should come as no surprise to anyone reading this book that the brain is a complex thing. You also know and understand that critical thinking, whether you know it or not, is basically a part of our human DNA, which factors into every single decision, response, and emotion we feel. Which is why it is important to point out that while the brain is a supercomputer, there are still the other parts that make us human. The brain is also in charge of our feelings, our behaviors, and our experiences. It also keeps our memories stored in a nice fire and waterproof box. It is also what allows us to see ourselves and our self-awareness. It's a phenomenon that many people today still do not fathom. Nobody really knows the secret to a totally 100% functioning brain or what we can do to speed up its processor speed. But there are definite things you can avoid to keep your brain healthy and functioning at a higher capacity. What does this have to do with critical thinking, you ask? I'm glad you did. If your brain is not functioning properly, then you don't make the best decisions. Your mood is off, your body is not balanced, and therefore, you could miss out on a huge promotion, give your kids the wrong algebra answer, screw up on a report to your boss that asked you to compare the cost of bringing in an outside firm to do a project versus doing it in-house, and the list goes on and on. While the other things I'm going to share with you are not new, and in no way all-inclusive, they are a basic guideline. You may personally have your own brain poisons, as I call them, that keep you from being the best and brightest you. Feeding your brain cells. Here's a blast from the past. Think back to your high school days in biology class. Remember the cell powerhouse, also called mitochondria? Don't worry, I didn't either until I started doing my research. However, it all came back to me. Here's a definition for those of you who were in high school not too long ago. Mitochondrion, plural mitochondria, energy converter, determinator, generator of reactive oxygen chemicals, enhancer, a provider of genetic history, and, controversially, an aid to boost the success rate in infertility treatment. So think about the nickname of this cell powerhouse. This name alone lets you know that it plays an integral role in our brains and our performance. So what does any coach do with a powerhouse? You put him or her in the game. You keep them hydrated, and you feed them all the best plays. Boom. This is how we must treat our mitochondrion. Learn how to keep this cell healthy and reproducing other healthy cells in Chapter 9, Daily Exercises. In the meantime, one of the critical things that can keep your mitochondrion healthy and producing other healthy cells is pure oxygen. Chapter 2. Why is critical thinking important? What is it that almost all critical thinkers have in common? Critical thinkers are commonly curious and reflective humans. They like to explore and probe new regions and seek knowledge, explanation, and new answers. They ask pertinent questions, examine statements and arguments, and they distinguish between data and opinion. They are also willing to look at their very own beliefs, possessing a way of humility that permits them to admit lack of know-how or expertise while wished. They are open to converting their minds. Perhaps, the maximum of all, their active mastering and searching for new know-how is a lifelong pursuit. Does this sound like you or anyone you know? Now, remember where you are on the journey to being a critical philosopher. You may always develop more and finely tune your talents. Doing so will help you expand, explicit yourself truly, examine severely, and glean crucial facts efficaciously. Critical thinking abilities will help you in any career or any condition of life, from science to art to enterprise to teaching. With essential thinking, you emerge as a clearer philosopher and trouble solver. Personal life critical thinking. For most of us, a standard day is packed with critical thinking and hard decision-making situations. If you didn't already know it, critical thinking and decision-making go hand in hand. Both critical thinking and tough decision-making are all about how we use the information presented to us and the statistics and data that you need to solve the problem. Please remember that with problem solving, it's all about how you process the information and react to it. Below are some examples of the usage of critical decision-making and thinking to overcome challenges and provide solutions. Problem solving is a critical element of critical thinking. See how I did that? Your best friend has become extremely angry and upset and declared you a moron. I don't know about you, but that would definitely put a strain on my relationship. In this situation, the best example of problem solving is your innate ability to look beyond your own anger and hurt and figure out how and where things went wrong and work to repair the relationship. Same as the previous example we provided, just different scenario. As a PTA member, you notice that the recent fundraisers haven't been garnering that much attention. You reach out to a marketing expert and develop strategies that will interest the community, teachers, parents, and students in participating. This is strategizing and a great example of problem-solving skills. If you are in college, there's no doubt you are in class, whether it be online or in a physical classroom behind a desk. Teachers can sense when students are not grasping a concept. They will oftentimes, if you notice, provide real-world examples, make light of the situation, or begin to ask relevant questions to bring you around to a lower level of anxiety. It's a gift teachers have. This is my favorite example. We've all, at one time or another, had to brush up the old resume and look for a new job. How many times have we found a dream job that we weren't that qualified for? Raise his hand. Did you sit down and figure out how you can take your current skills and knowledge, coupled with your tenacity and desire to succeed, to wow the interviewers enough to consider you a strong candidate on merit and potential? Nice. It's time to pay rent mortgage again. I thought I just did that. No? I'm the only one that says that? Okay. At least we can agree that you sit down once a month and balance your checkbook, do some financial planning, and prepare for the kids' college fund, right? That's problem-solving 101 right there. Workplace critical thinking. How frequently have you reacted quickly to a given scenario at your job or made a rushed business choice to later back down because you didn't take a moment to consider all the facts from the start? This typically takes place to every single person on the planet at one point in their lives. Most often, we do this when we were young more than we do as adults, but I'm not here to judge. This is where the critical thinking that we possess as adults is relevant. Let's talk about that in more detail. So let's talk about critical thinking in the workplace and how it affects us in positive ways when we use it. You already learned how to use it in your personal life. Next, we will discuss how to teach critical thinking to your child during their development stages. It's not easy to teach, but it is a fundamental principle we all need and can be introduced to your children at whatever developmental age you feel they need. Now back to work, literally and figuratively. Critical thinking in the workplace affects the following areas. Being an effective leader. Critical questioning and decision-making are critical in the work context. Those of you who are in supervision roles need to enhance their analytical examination abilities, as these capabilities will, more often than not, allow them to understand multiple circumstances within the workplace in a more favorable manner. Critical examination enables one to observe circumstances keenly and weigh all probable answers first, instead of going off of your gut instinct. Critical thinking is a method of in-depth examination, as we have discussed previously. We already know that it requires a level of criticism that many are able to intellectually justify, and as a result, knowledge is not combined with research to make informed decisions. To be effective in any supervisory role or leadership role, you have to have the ability to think critically and strategically. Time saving. Not all facts are created equal. We know that. Part of us that are processing information is determining what is relevant and what is not within nanoseconds of it being registered in our brain. Critical thinking skills at work allow you to save time and prioritize your employees, your resources, and your projects by processing all of the information needed to make a decision, and then analyzing what is the best choice, and then applying that choice and making it live. Ultimately, through exploration, analysis, and problem-solving skills, an effective leader will recognize that the determinations they arrived at are indeed the right ones. Therefore, they are ultimately able to save valuable time that can be used on income-producing activities and client priorities. We approach problems differently, and that's okay. We know the adage that says, if we all looked alike and thought alike, it would be a boring place. Having different viewpoints and ways of problem-solving is a great thing in the workplace. 2 heads are always better than 1, and 3 are better than 2. You get the point. Capitalize on your human resources and utilize the diversity among them to arrive at effective solutions. Communication is improved. Critical thinking and problem-solving teach you a way to examine and provide proof for any given notion, consequently making you an effective communicator. Consistent and appropriate points to back up your idea are critical in speaking a proposition successfully. Workplace drama. Nobody likes drama, especially at work. But we all know it happens, and if you are in a leadership role or management role, it's even more important that critical thinking guide your decisions more than emotions and pressure. When people can sense there is no leadership or nobody who is thinking like the grown-up in the room, It causes fears in some and a false and self-appointed leadership role in others. Neither is good for the workplace. In contrast, when you have a work environment that fosters creative thinking and imagination, then it also gives people a sense of self-involvement and worth. A good end result. Are you the person that can spot the mistake in everything? Are you the anal one? I'm just kidding. That's what we call a keen attention to detail. And it's a key characteristic of leaders who employ critical thinking in just about every aspect of their lives. People like to get stuck and be comfortable with where they are simply because, as humans, we do not like change. It's in our DNA. I honestly believe that. When you start to learn to apply critical thinking to your every decision, thoughts, and reaction, watch how much your thoughts change. You even start to become more optimistic about things. Remember the example we talked about where you are running an hour late for the day and it throws off your whole day? Remember, she was going to stay angry simply because she had so much invested in that project. So, her critical thinking became compromised the moment she became entrenched in every aspect and ultimately placed the entire success for failure on her own shoulders. When you are opting for a good result, it is often a good idea to take a back seat when you are personally invested, so that the project can be successful without being biased. Think about this as a prime example. When a lawyer feels that something in his personal life may interfere with the outcome of his client's case, he will recuse himself. Same premise here. Does critical thinking in the workplace make you anxious to get back to work right this minute? Too soon? Okay, I get it. Let's keep going. There are tons of websites on the internet that can help you become a more effective leader at work. If that is your ultimate goal, I wish you much success. Learning is a lifelong process, and gaining that particular skill set is going to be a lucrative career move for those of you who seek to add to your skill set. Kudos to you. Speaking of kudos, let's switch our focus to how we can teach our children the important fundamentals of critical thinking. Kudos, kids! Child development and critical thinking. I'm sure by now you can see why it's important for even us, as adults, to build and always expand on our critical thinking skills. What about our children? There are many educators that I speak with on a regular basis that highly encourage parents to develop a critical thought process and to always question the validity of the information they receive to process it properly. It's not really something that teachers have time or sometimes not always have the knowledge on how to incorporate this into their lesson plans. And with a room full of children, each of which who learns differently and process information differently, it's hard to deliver a cookie-cutter, one-size-fits-all in a curriculum to address this. It is certainly in a parent's nature to want to protect our kids from the big bad world. But the truth of the matter is, by coddling them or keeping them sheltered, we don't allow them the experience of being able to process information and make good decisions on their own. This can be dangerous for children because it leaves them vulnerable to predators that can smell their naivete a mile away. Social media is a prime example of where critical thinking skills are depleted. Think about all the kids and even adults who do not possess the common sense and critical analysis to send up a red flag and let them know when they are being tricked when something is fake or real. Who is their friend and who has an agenda? The list goes on and on. Well, I'm not telling you this to scare you. I am merely pointing out how important it is to teach our children these fundamental principles to keep them safe and well on the way to be a successful leader with years of critical thinking enhancement and development. Think of where you would be if you had started honing on that skill as a child. I get goosebumps when I think about it. But alas, the children shall lead us. So where do you begin? I know you are asking yourself that very question. I did a lot of research on this topic and broke it down to the most effective methods for you. Many psychologists suggest starting with having a conversation. Turn off all televisions and radios, take their cell phone if you have to, or ask them to leave it in their room, and sit down at the kitchen table and or in the living room, someplace they are comfortable, so they don't feel as if they are in trouble. You want to let them know you trust them, and simply be honest. Let them know about scams and hackers, the not-so-nice guys in chat rooms, and even their friends who are just as uninformed as they are. The main thing is to explain to them how important it is to think about every detail and question it. Teach them how to pay attention to that inner warning siren and to question things that simply do not add up. Remember, some people have spent years perfecting their message or to just flat out say it. So even though it may seem great, and even if they trust the person, tell them it's okay to question it if it doesn't feel right. At the end of the day, do what is best for you and your family. If you have had any experiences, tell your child about them. Certainly don't choose a story that would traumatize them, but choose one that showed how you had to process through information, both real and fake, to arrive at a good outcome for yourself. These scams are always going to keep evolving, and new ones are always going to come up. Just have them always ask questions and never take anything at face value regardless of the source. Let them ask you questions at this point and watch their wheels start turning. Some educators recommend that you try incorporating game night. Did you ever play Battleship or Clue growing up? Whether you know it or not, those games were teaching you critical thinking skills. Some common games today, depending on the age of your child, are Apples to Apples, Time's Up, Fact or Crap, I love this one, Scattergories, and Moods. Search Google for common board games to develop critical thinking skills in children. You can use that exact search in quotes and find tons as well as where to buy it locally or online. Happy critical gaming. If you have smaller children who still have story time, try adding in a puzzle riddle book, sometimes called brain sizzlers, into your reading list a couple times a week instead of The Princess and the Frog. I do not recommend that you do this at bedtime, as your child will be a little too tired to think critically, and therefore it's a waste of a good opportunity. Try reading to your child and having them do the puzzles riddles right after dinner. Remember, we don't think critically when we are hungry, so before dinner is not the best choice either. You will find the right time based on what you have learned in this book and your personal home life schedule. Go to the local supermarket and pick up one of those rag mags. I won't name any here. You know which ones I'm talking about. The ones you glance over the headlines at during checkout. Then, grab a scholarly magazine or journal. During one of your reading sessions, go through both with your child. Compare the two and ask them how they feel when you read one of the ridiculously absurd headlines in the rag mag versus when they read an easily discernible passage from the other magazine. It doesn't have to be scholarly, just in complete contrast to the other magazine you choose. Have them question the facts in that magazine. Chapter 3. How you can develop critical thinking skills. Characteristics of exceptional critical thinkers. As we talked about in the last chapter, there's a certain set of characteristics that all critical thinkers have and that are the keys to effective problem solving. Let's look at these characteristics in a bit more detail, so you understand how they are important in helping you develop and enhance your critical thinking skills. Put it in neutral. We've talked quite a bit about personal values and how they play a role in the decisions we make. The most important characteristic of an exceptional critical thinker is that they know how to separate their personal beliefs from the decision at hand, regardless of if it's a personal situation or not. Remember, question everything, even the resources you know to be true, just like you will teach your children. People who are unable to keep their personal opinions, biases, and beliefs in check when making a big decision miss key facts and information. Always keep an open mind and go into the process by being neutral, remain neutral, and deciding from a neutral standpoint. The Gumby quality. I like to call this characteristic the Gumby quality because the second most important characteristic is the ability to be flexible and willing to compromise. If you aren't open-minded and willing to accept different points of view or aren't willing to compromise, there is no way you can face a tough decision and get the desired outcome. Be willing to accept other viewpoints. There are infinite ways we can approach a problem or situation. People who have the Gumby quality can see the path of least resistance and do what it takes to arrive at a favorable decision, and one that takes in the best interest of all parties involved. Words matter. Exceptional critical thinkers, who can remain neutral and flexible, know the right words to use to help them formulate the right questions to the situations they are presented with. This opens different perspectives and provides deeper clarity. Some of the common words that you will hear them use are accurate, ambiguous, argument, assumption, bias, clarify, concept, conclude, consistency, contradiction, criteria, critical listening, critique, cultural assumption, data, dialectical thinking, domains of thought, egocentricity, insight, knowledge, justification, monological, opinion, prejudice, proof, question, rationale, specific, theory, vague, worldview. While that list is not all-inclusive, it is certainly something to keep in mind as you work with your child for developing your own skills. Try incorporating at least one of these words a week into your problem solving and when questioning the validity of the facts and information you have been presented with. Simple steps to enhance critical thinking. In Chapter 8, we discuss more specific ways to build critical thinking through everyday techniques and tricks. What this section covers is about how to set the foundation. This simple step process will enable you to immediately understand the foundation of building and developing critical thinking skills and help you make better decisions as a result. This is meant to show you the difference in normal thought process versus critical thinking. All of these are noteworthy and will begin to change your thought process even before you finish the rest of this book. While there are certainly tons of methods for developing critical skills, this method is one which I have used and comes highly recommended by many scholars and educators. Keep in mind everything that we have discussed so far. Bring it back to the forefront of your mind, and we will start with mindset first. Without building the foundation, the house is sure to crumble, right? KUAA. This is what I like to call knowledge, understanding, action, analysis. Get in a comfortable mental state and recall a time you were faced with a similar decision. How did you deal with it? What did you do to arrive at your decision? What helpful analysis can you use in this current situation? Why did your outcome come out successful last time? Did you seek help, and are they available now? Understanding. Do you understand what the problem is that you are dealing with right now? What is the root cause or issue? What can allow you to come at this from different angles? How is this the same as the last or previous situations? Action. The goal of the action step is to consider all the possible outcomes. Do not go outside your scope of knowledge from above and use your past experiences and draw from them. Always remember to keep an open mind and be unbiased. If you aren't sure, ask yourself, what's going to happen if I do this? Or how can I benefit from doing this? What could possibly happen if I don't do this? The KUAA part of the simple step process is designed to get your mind juices flowing and allows you to get ready to go on to the next phase of the process, which is analyzing the information and what caused it to happen in the first place. This is the comparing and analyzing we discussed in earlier chapters. You will want to ask yourself, what is the correlation between this piece and this piece? What are the inferences I can make between the differences? How are they related to each other? Why did this even happen to begin with? What can be determined from this problem? What solutions can I come up with to fix this? This is where you start to make direct connections to pieces of information. What can you do differently to make this end positively? What can you do to make the process better? Is there a way to test and measure my theories? If I had complete control, what would I do differently? Are you still with me? Hopefully you haven't fallen asleep and are applying these principles as we go along to a current problem you are facing right now. This doesn't have to just be personal or work-related. It can be one or the other or both. Analysis. So let's move on to the last and final step in this process. It's the analysis of the information you have been presented with that has to do with the problem you are trying to solve. This is where you need to come up with the criteria you will use to analyze the information. How are you going to verify the information you have? How can you be sure of what's going to happen? How are you sure this is the best possible solution? How are you going to show a comparison of the alternatives to the best solution? Have you evaluated this from all possible angles? Can someone debate and win against your argument? We talked about the characteristics of an exceptional critical thinker, and remember that one of them is the ability to remain neutral. People who follow this process by asking different questions each time get answers than those people who follow a standard thought process who would not be able to arrive at. This process also is designed to speed up your decision-making time and allow you to focus on other things. Did you find this to be helpful going into your decision-making process? If so, share it with someone you know, or teach your employees how to come up with their own to help cut down on micromanaging projects at work. Teach a simpler version to your children to help them wade through social media, friends with good and bad intentions, and even their teachers and coaches. As extremely as important as critical thinking is, there is one major factor that we haven't discussed in a lot of detail yet, and that's self-confidence. In the next chapter, you will learn not only what self-confidence is, but why it's important in critical thinking and decision-making. Chapter 4. Self-Confidence Explained. What is self-confidence? Everyone reading this book should have a basic understanding of what confidence is. If not, a simple Google search will do wonders. What we want to talk about in this book, as it relates to critical thinking, is one confidence. Yes, there are many. The type of confidence required making good decisions, analyzing information, and think about things abjectly is called self-confidence. So what does that mean specifically? If you are asking yourself that question, congratulations. You are using your critical thinking skills to question and analyze the information I've given you already. Woo! Asking that question is also critical in understanding why building up your self-confidence is important to us in the first place. 1. Do you love who you are and what you have accomplished in life? 2. Are you generally happy all the time? 3. Are you successful in your career? 4. Can you go to the movies or a crowded bar by yourself without staring at your cell phone the whole time? 5. Can you go through life without having to always put on makeup or gel spike your hair? 6. Do you sometimes ride the bus even though you have a car just to be around other people? If you answered yes to all those questions, then you are pretty much self-confident at this point, but that's just an educated guess. Let's keep going to truly find out. Answering yes to those questions in a book is one thing, but what you are going to do in a real-world situation that's been thrust upon you, you aren't prepared for it. Would you still have the same reaction? When you have mastered the art of self-confidence, then your answer will always be a resounding yes. The reason is that our self-confidence is not something that can be textbook taught. It is a behavior and quality you can learn to possess, but it's a little more complicated than that. Self-confidence is about being able to adapt to any situation and knowing that your happiness is not determined by other people. Where does self-confidence come from? So, we said that self-confidence comes from within us. But is that all there really is to it? It is. It's really about the difference in your mindset. Do you see the glass as half empty or half full? Do you say, I don't know if I can? Or I know that I can't fail? Do you ask yourself, should I? Or do you say, why shouldn't I? All of us, regardless of our age, our religion, or background, have 3 extraordinary powers. Regardless of what you may think, we all have the power to reflect on and think about our circumstances, no matter how dire, in a positive light, instead of choosing to focus on only the negative side of things. We all have the power to know and accept that without a doubt, we are special, we are valued, and we are loved. And we also have the power to remain positive about ourselves, despite what others think, feel, or even say about us. That's pretty awesome, right? Write these 3 powers down on a sticky note and put them in various places in your house. Use them in every situation and notice an improvement in your self-confidence even if you believe it can't be any better. What these boil down to at the end of the day is this. To become more self-confident, it requires recognizing our power and then strengthening that power through reinforcement. As I said, even if you believe your self-confidence is superior, it is important to know that you can develop it even more. Why? Another good question. You're full of them today, huh? When people hear me say, I'm working on building my self-confidence, I often hear people ask me, What are you trying to do? Become arrogant? Ouch. No, that is not at all what I am referring to here. Arrogance is not the same as self-confidence. Arrogance has no use, whereas self-confidence does. A little disclaimer here. I'm in no way disparaging anyone if they do not have self-confidence. Again, this is something that is personal to every single one of us. There's no right or wrong amount of self-confidence. If, again, it doesn't fall into either the super gullible or overtly arrogant sides of the spectrum, then it's all well and good. Think of this. Why do you want to be a certain way, and how can you become that way? Our lives are improved beyond measure when we have the right amount of self-confidence and keep working to improve it. Do not feel bad if you have low self-confidence or none. There's always room for growth in each one of us. Now that you understand and know the way of having more self-confidence and where it comes from, let's examine the overall benefits in more detail. The benefits of high self-confidence. Here are 7 key benefits of high self-confidence. This list is not inclusive by any means. Know your worth. Higher levels of self-confidence leads you to knowing the value of your place on this earth and in the people's lives around you. Ever heard of the saying, hold your head up high? It's a natural thing that happens when you have more self-confidence. Watch someone you know who has high levels of self-confidence. Did you at first think to yourself that they were stuck up? Did you prejudge them? Shame on you. Just kidding. It's a natural reaction when someone is proud of who they are as a person and in society. If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. This is a no-brainer. People with great self-confidence enjoy life to the fullest and are generally happier and more enjoyable to be around. Don't doubt yourself. When you have great self-confidence, you typically tend to judge and criticize yourself less. When you do this, you stop yourself from being creative and taking chances. Learn from everything. People with higher self-confidence already understand that every situation and every problem is an opportunity to learn how to adapt to any given circumstance. This naturally allows you to feel less fear and stress and more confidence in your own powers. Action Jackson. If you don't have high self-confidence, procrastination and fear are killers of many goals and positive outcomes to problems and situations. Fear is a huge demotivator and dream killer. Life of the party. You ever met that one guy who is always the life of the party? He has a good story or adventure to tell. Everyone hangs on his every word. People wait on him hand and foot, and he's always at the hottest event and party. People with more self-confidence than others tend to be a lot more relaxed and easier to be around. They aren't uptight, and these are the people that others look up to and admire. They embrace and listen to more, and they also have huge amounts of respect for. Convinced yet? No? Then, what if I told you that you could be healthier and get more rest? Better rest, better body. No stress leads to healthier and younger-looking skin and hair. Less stress leads to more peaceful nights of sleep and no anxiety. Happier people who enjoy life are naturally healthier people. Guess who they are? You got it. They are the self-confident people. If a good night's rest is not enough to convince you, I don't know what is. Wink. Those of you who feel you have exceedingly high self-confidence naturally feel stronger. Am I right? You don't really worry about being stood up or told no. You rarely feel any anxiety or pressure when you're put in uncomfortable situations. You aren't afraid to put yourself out there and stand alone. And let's say, for the sake of argument, and to keep it realistic, you do get shot down from time to time. Those of you with high levels of confidence bounce back quicker. You don't hide in your room with the curtains drawn for a week and forget to shower or eat. No, you brush off your shoulder and keep it moving. Each time you encounter a no, you get stronger and stronger, and you learn how easily you maneuver through life. When you think about this, how many of you who thought you were doing okay in the self-confidence department see the benefit of becoming even more self-confident? So, do you want to have more self-confidence? Let me try asking you another way. Do you want to be able to increase your self-confidence and become the person that doesn't always have trouble making tough decisions without going into panic mode? Good. Then keep reading. The road to higher self-confidence starts with the desire to want it. This means you are willing to step out of your comfort zone, making it a great quality to possess. Provided you have already learned what self-confidence is, this all means that your next step is to learn more about how to start developing it in a simple and easy way. There are plenty of books that dive into this in much more detail. For the sake of this book, let's talk about how this plays in with critical thinking and decision-making. Chapter 5. What does self-confidence have to do with my decision-making? Hopefully, what you have read so far has given you some ideas as to how your self-confidence plays into decision-making. Let's look at it more closely just in case it hasn't clicked for you yet. How many times have you asked yourself one, if not all, of these questions? What time do I set my alarm clock for? Do I pick up Jenny for soccer practice first or Tom for basketball? Do I wear the light jacket or the heavy coat? Scrambled or over easy? Each day, we are faced with decisions, both ones we think and analyze, and ones we do out of habit without even thinking about them anymore. Then there are those major decisions that seem to stop us dead in our tracks. Have you ever not made a decision for fear of making the wrong one? You are not alone. The number one reason why people fear making a decision is just that. They are afraid of making the wrong decision, especially when those decisions affect more than just us. When you think about it, the fact that you decided not to make a decision is a decision itself. It is also far worse a decision than the wrong one you could possibly make. It's a natural human reaction to fear the unknown and play the what-if game. We should, but not to the point that it paralyzes us into non-action. Considering all possible outcomes is a part of the natural critical thinking process, but it is not focusing only on the negative outcomes. This fear is a direct result of low self-confidence levels. We discussed the characteristics of an exceptional critical thinker, and we established that self-confidence is an important trait to have. Self-confidence in decision-making allows us to have favorable and unbiased perceptions of our powers that we discussed earlier. It's the combination of being assertive, having enthusiasm, being independent, remaining optimistic, trusting the process, and having the maturity and emotional stability to handle rejection and criticism, as we also discussed. Remember that self-confidence is not taught in school, and it's not something we inherit from our parents. Many things help us to develop or not develop self-confidence. It's also determined by many outside factors, and factors we do not have any control over, such as our personal religion, our family makeup, society influences, whether we are male or female, our ethnicity, and even our environment. People who have good self-confidence are those who are able to remain in control of their circumstances around them. They also hold firm to the belief that they can do whatever it is they set their mind to, within sanity, of course, and be able to adjust to unforeseen problems. They are immensely grounded in a positive future for themselves and their control over their own destiny. This is all at healthy levels, as we mentioned, of course. That means that when they do not meet a goal, or they do face rejection, they don't suddenly doubt everything they believe in or their value. Their light continues to shine, and they know that eventually things will correct themselves. It is how the universe is designed to work. True self-confidence means you take things head-on regardless of the potential that you will not always succeed or win. Self-confident people are taking risks, and they stick their necks out to constantly achieve a better quality of life, product, or outcome. They do not avoid responsibility. They own up to their mistakes, and they grow from them. They know that every single situation, life experience, and trials are a learning experience. They can see the sun behind the clouds, even in a thunderstorm. That's the way I like to look at it. You know what critical thinking is, what self-confidence is, and how they play an integral joint role in our lives. Let's talk about how to maintain self-confidence. We will talk about specific self-confidence building techniques in Chapter 7. Chapter 6. Building Self-Confidence Techniques and Tips. As previously discussed, self-confidence is an essential part of humanity. It's who we are and further strive to become. Someone with self-confidence always thinks positively of themselves even when they fail. They're willing to take additional risks for greater rewards to become successful in their personal and professional life, and they remain optimistic about the future no matter what. The opposite is true of someone with low self-confidence. They do not feel they will accomplish their goals. They constantly doubt themselves and their value, and they really don't see beyond today, let alone well into the future. One of the reasons you are reading this book is that you want to improve your self-confidence and ultimately your critical thinking skills. Good news for you is that it is completely possible without having to wait years to see the effects. As we mentioned, it all starts with the foundation, and that is your mindset. Start by thinking positively about yourself and when you have interactions with people. Try to make note of any negative feelings that arise during these interactions and examine them at a later time. Get and keep a journal on what you want to accomplish and what goals you want to achieve. Don't be afraid to take small risks for small gains to start out and watch how your self-confidence improves just by doing that simple task. Here are some other ways to build your self-confidence fairly easily. Just say no to negativity. If you catch yourself saying, "I am going to fail," or "nobody cares what I think," or even, "I know I cannot do that," tell that annoying little voice to be quiet and go sit down in the corner. It's a killer to increasing your self-confidence or developing any at all for that matter. Instead, replace your vocabulary and ultimately your thoughts. When you catch yourself being negative, immediately try to correct yourself with positive words instead. Instead of saying, "Nobody cares what I think," say, "I know at least one person will listen to me." Instead of saying, "I am going to fail," say, "I am going to give it a shot." And instead of saying, "I know I cannot do that," say, "I can do this if I try." Do this a few times a day to start out with, and then eventually you will find that you do it all the time without even thinking about it. It's a conditioning. Do not allow yourself to be consumed by negative thoughts. Focus on the positive ones. Eventually, positive thoughts will buy up all the real estate in your brain and force the negative thoughts to vacate the premises. Legally, of course. Keep your friends close and your positive friends closer. We all have that one friend who is a negative Nancy and tends to be insensitive and say mean things to make us feel bad. Is it just me? Mental note, fire Nancy as BFF. Take my advice and find some new friends. Focus on surrounding yourself with people who are positive. That is more than just your friends, but family and coworkers as well. Sometimes our family, God bless their hearts, despite their good intentions, often affects us with their own personal opinions and 2 cents on what we should and should not be doing in our lives. And the more you distance yourself from them, be prepared for them to become even more cynical. I just want you to know, it comes with the territory. People fear being left behind or left out. FOMO, fear of missing out. Until you have fully built up your self-confidence to be like the life of the party we talked about, limit your interactions with these family members as well. Do some reflection and introspection on the people that are consistently in your inner circle. Do they make you feel good or bad? Make a list and then set a realistic goal to start spending more time with the people who are more positive and could be a great support system as you work on self-growth and increasing your self-confidence. Clean house, literally. Just like you are going to purge the negative people from your life, you must also do the same thing with inanimate objects that make you feel bad about yourself as well. They can range from anything to a memory of a bad experience, your favorite dress or pair of slacks that you cannot fit into anymore, to actual places that no longer represent you as a person or where you are striving to become, and that may bring on negative feelings instead of positive ones. You cannot possibly eliminate every single person, place, or thing that causes you pain. At least consider what the benefits would be of removing them. This is a great exercise in boosting your self-confidence and swapping negative for positive. Make another list, just like you did with the people in your life. Only this time make one for everything, the people, the places, and the things that bring you down. And on the other side of the paper, I want you to focus on everything good about yourself, all of our skills and God-given talents. We all have something we are extraordinary at. Allow yourself to feel pride in them. If you do not have anything that you feel you're good at, now is the time to start adding some hobbies and activities to your daily routine. Doing so will allow you to be more confident and also gives you a chance to interact with like-minded people who will help support you and build up your self-confidence as well. When we follow our dreams and passions, it's therapeutic and helps relieve stress. You should always take every opportunity to feel good and proud of what you have accomplished and your skills and talents, but don't ignore the things that you already have that make you, you. Your personality traits. Do you make people laugh? Do you listen well? Do you have extreme empathy for others? Whether you believe this or not, there is something about each of us that someone else admires. If you take the time to learn about yourself, you may even be surprised to find out there's more than just one thing. Write them down and keep this list handy as well. Be humble and graceful. People who tend to have lower levels of self-confidence do not take compliments well. They always look for a reason why the person made a mistake and didn't actually mean what they say, or they think there is some kind of motive for them to be paid a compliment. If you are one of those people who tends to suck your teeth and roll your eyes when someone gives you a compliment, you should consider being a bit more humble and gracefully accept the compliment with a smile if you can't find nice words to say in return. Otherwise, it's okay to take it and say thank you. It is important that we do not make someone feel bad or questioned about paying us a compliment, especially if we want more of them from that person. Let them know that you appreciate them noticing, no matter how insignificant it may seem to you. Add that compliment to the list you made of all of your good qualities, if it is not already there, and use it to work on building your self-confidence as you reread that list over and over again over the coming days, weeks, and months. Mirror, mirror on the wall, say cheese. Yes, I am dead serious. Walk into the bathroom and look at yourself square in the eyes and smile. In case you aren't sure what that is, it's a frown upside down, okay? All kidding aside, there is a theory called facial feedback, where numerous studies were performed testing and measuring how our brains react to certain emotions simply based on the expression on our faces. Cool, right? The studies show that by smiling at yourself in the mirror at least once a day, you end up with increased self-confidence. It also allows you to feel more confident about the way you look and tend to be more It also allows you to feel more confident about the way you look and to be more accepting of your looks in the long run. Naturally, when we smile at others, they return a smile unless they are having a horrible day or just downright mean and rude. When people smile at us in return, it releases a bit of adrenaline that boosts our confidence. Chapter 7. Keeping Self-Confidence in Check. How are you feeling so far? We are almost at the end of this particular journey together, and I want to check in on where you are feeling. Do you feel this is completely doable? Am I out of my mind? A little of both? Good. Then I've done my duty. Let's carry on, shall we? This chapter is going to examine how we keep that self-confidence once we've taken the steps to build it up. A real-world example is, maybe you are a stay-at-home mom-dad who once had a very successful career. You are by no means a stay-at-home parent by choice, but due to the economy, massive layoffs, and outsourcing, you aren't feeling so confident in your self-worth or your value. We touched upon this briefly, and now I want to take the time to fully address the quality of the food we eat, especially over the last few years. Processed and packaged foods are seeing rising cases of food allergies and chronic pain, depression, stress and anxiety, sleep disorders, bad eating habits, and even a severe change in their moods and behaviors. Not in a good way either, the way that nobody wants to be around you. As I mentioned, I'm not a doctor or a psychologist, but in doing my research and critical analysis of the role our food plays in our brain function and our behaviors, I found that certain foods cause certain negative behaviors, especially dairy, gluten, and wheat products. Bye-bye, pizza! Just kidding. Seriously though, food allergies along with aging and our interaction with food tend to break and wear down the body and the mind. This is not breaking out in hives, But foods that do not promote healthy cellular reproduction deteriorate our bodies over time. I recommend that you have your doctor test you for food allergies and keep a journal documenting your mood and behaviors after each meal. Not immediately after, but at least 24 hours out after it's been digested and in your bloodstream. Not only is maintaining self-confidence about eating right, but it's also, as we touched upon, about surrounding yourself with the people, places, and things that raise it and your perceived value in life. More importantly, it's keeping the ego in check, the difference between arrogance and self-confidence. Feeling indestructible is a luxury only teenagers can afford. It's not as attractive or respected as an adult. Learning to maintain your self-confidence and keep it in check is going to be critical to balance and moderate. It starts with being brutally honest with yourself and knowing your limits. Knowing your limits allows you to be fully aware of your powers. This means you don't downplay others' powers and you don't try to be like the Joneses. Everyone has their own lane, and they should stay in it. When you know your lane, you tend to wade into the deep end versus taking a blindfolded flip off the high dive. If someone tells you it's not a good idea to high dive into an empty pool with a blindfold on, you hear them out. You accept all forms of criticism, and you value constructive critique from those you admire. This is a huge factor in being able to maintain self-confidence and to keep it in check. Now, don't get me wrong, not all criticism is meant to be good. It's up to you to put on that critical thinking cap and wade through the information, question the validity, and arrive at your own conclusion. The whole premise is that it doesn't make you devalue yourself, but instead challenges you to be better and continue to grow and expand. Arrogance does not allow us to think with bias, and we certainly don't have a Gumby quality. When we take an overconfident stance on every win and the one time we don't win, you leave yourself open for continuous discouragement and disappointment. As we talked about earlier, surround yourself with people who are self-confident. They aren't arrogant, and their honesty will keep you in check and help you accept the constructive criticism. People who are always enabling you and not telling you the truth to please you are doing you no favors. And that's one of the quickest ways to someone becoming a little arrogant. You feel perfect and 12 feet tall. Check yourself before you wreck yourself. I love that saying because it's so true. Focus on constantly striving to do more and be better. The one key difference between arrogance and self-confidence is one word: empathy. You may have confidence in some areas and not in others. That's how it works for most of us. Draw from those areas where you're self-assured. If you don't feel you measure up in certain situations, recall a time when you felt extremely confident. Just always remember this: you are a capable being, you are valued, and you are worthy. Just as I am, just as she is, and just as he is. It doesn't matter what you did in your past, what mistakes you have made, or what problems you have caused. Believe it in your heart and soul. Believing it is the path to actually doing it, and doing it is the key to achieving greatness. Chapter 8: Building Critical Thinking, Techniques and Tips. So what exactly does it mean to build my critical thinking? The simplest way to answer that would be it's things you can do to help you understand how things are related on a basic level and then how to analyze it and act on it. Critical thinking is about using a skill that takes similarities or patterns in data and information and how to take that information and apply it to real-world situations and problems. Below are a few exercises you can revise and adapt to work on building your critical thinking on a daily basis. These methods were adapted from Psychology Today. In all fairness, anything new you learn is an example of helping you to think critically. You build your resolve as you learn something new and accomplish it. Never stop asking questions. Ever. While it is true that critical thinkers are highly intelligent people, it's also equally important that their decisions are not always so intricate. In fact, the cleaner and clearer, the better. Everything that you hear, that you see, that you read and are told is often out of habit. Instead of doing that as you normally do, ask yourself some questions. What is this problem? What is a possible outcome? What are the advantages and disadvantages of each side? You will have to make a decision either way, but at least you are now more prepared to come up with an unbiased and effective choice. Have you ever heard someone say, consider the source, or the WIIFM of it all, the what's in it for me? You have to consider the source of the information and a motive for giving that information. It's not always blatantly obvious, but always looking for one will eventually help you become adept at automatically knowing if one exists and when to dig deeper to uncover the real motivations. That leads into doing your own research and investigation. We know we have millions of pieces of data coming at us on any given day. What we do with that information and how we act on it is one of the powerful tools that we have. Always do your due diligence, even if it's a problem or situation you've encountered before. With the invention of the internet, there are always new ways of dealing with problems, and it's up to us to sort through the information to get rid of what is not relevant and then analyze the rest. Don't make the mistake of always thinking you are the only right person in the room. We all do it. It's a natural human feeling to want to be right all the time. It's pretty amazing to be right, isn't it? The feeling and satisfaction are not like anything else. Always going into every situation thinking this will be all right is not the way exceptional critical thinkers operate. Work on that if it is a problem for you. If you fail to keep the opinions and views of others in mind, you aren't challenging yourself, and you are doing a great disservice to the project and/or problem you are trying to solve. When we have to consider other points of view, it forces it to compare those to our own, and that is a good quality of critical thinking. Another great quality is the ability to get down to the nitty-gritty. What is at the bottom of this barrel? What is the bigger picture here? What are all the pieces that make up the puzzle? Most problems do not get resolved overnight, and they can't be solved at one time. You can, however, break the problem down into manageable, bite-sized processes. It's much easier to solve the smaller pieces of a puzzle like finishing all of the skies and then moving on to all of the grass. Just like a doctor in medical school, while they can certainly stay at a Holiday Inn Express and do surgery the next day, it's not likely the outcome will be good for anyone. Doctors are required, before being board certified, to understand how the entire body not only works but how each individual part functions on its own and as a whole. Does that make sense? Get to know who you are as a person. Take some time to get to know you. You would be surprised at how much you actually like you. You cannot change negative behaviors if you don't know that you are doing them. Listen to the thoughts that come into your head. As I mentioned before, keep a journal and begin to write down the feelings you have towards yourself. Take a moment to think about why you have those feelings and see if you can analyze them. Don't leave it there. Switch then to the things that you love about yourself and why you love them. The key here is to be brutally honest and don't just stick with topics that are comfortable. You need to get out of your comfort zone for this exercise to work properly. Think about what you can and cannot do. Are there really things you mentally or physically cannot do, or are they just things you have convinced yourself are real limitations? Always act positively no matter what. It's not just enough to think positively, as we discussed. You can't just talk about it, you have to be about it. And action is the number one positive proof of building self-confidence. Try walking with your head held high like we talked about earlier. Not only keep your head held high, but also walk the talk and stand tall. Your posture helps you feel better and think clearer. So does exercise. It's one of the most empowering things you can do as you build and maintain confidence. Simply take a walk a couple times a week or do some jumping jacks in the garage. Whatever you do, I promise you will feel a whole lot better physically and mentally. Knowledge is power. Yes, it is most certainly true. When you empower yourself with the power of knowledge, you work on building your self-confidence and increase your mental capacity. It's a double win. There are tons of ways that you can gain knowledge, like studying a new topic or idea. Do research on something related to a problem or situation you are currently facing. Google is one of the best inventions around, but it is no comparison to the positive people you have in your life. People who know they have the authority and are self-confident often speak slowly and deliberately. A person with low self-esteem believes they are not worthy enough to be heard and will oftentimes rush through what they are trying to say. Try doing this a couple times a day, even if you aren't necessarily feeling all that confident. Do not go overboard, but let it come to you naturally. Critical thinking is not just a process or a method we learn. It's an actual way of life that transcends subject matter divisions. Chapter 9. 13 Daily Exercises for Better Brain Functionality and Improve Your Critical Thinking Skills. It is of utmost importance that you put into practice everything you have learned in this book. Daily exercises give your mind the stimulation and healthy cell reproduction that improves our memories and also helps with how well we age. Do these any time in the morning before starting your day, or if you do not have time to do it each morning, find a time of day when you have a few moments to yourself and write down how you feel in your journal. Use your other hand. If you are a lefty, try writing and doing things with your right hand. If you are a right-handed person, try doing things with your left hand. Do not try to do anything difficult. Start small with simple tasks like opening the door, moving your mouse, eating, and even brushing with your teeth. When we use our opposite hand, it forces us to increase our brain function and activity. This may seem like a challenge and a bit uncomfortable at first, but it will give you a great mental workout. Chopsticks over forks. Not everyone is good at using chopsticks. If you are, using your opposite hand for this works just as well. Eating with chopsticks not only causes us to be cautious about what we eat, but it is great on our bodies for digestion and even helps to moderate our calorie intake. Close your eyes. I'm not by any means encouraging anyone to drive around with their eyes closed or attempt to chop vegetables. Try small things like brushing your teeth with your eyes closed while using your left hand. Wash the dishes, no knives, with your eyes closed, or even fold the laundry. What this does is it creates new neural pathways, which are the highways that information travels on to get to our brain. Again, please do not do anything that will put you or others at risk of danger. Turn your world upside down. As much as I would like to see you stand on your head, that's not exactly what I'm referring to here. Brain stimulation occurs when we try to look at things that are not right side up. Do you wear a watch? If so, start with that. Turn it upside down, and each time you look to see what time it is, your brain will have to work to read upside down. This increases your ability to think sharper, learn better, and retain more. Try even hanging a clock upside down. Can you imagine your life if you think greatly, focus more attention, and full of brain energy? Read out loud. It's okay now. As a child, we were often taught to read in silence. That was a part of my upbringing, at least. Recently, research has shown that reading out loud engages imaginations and stretches it in lots of good ways. If you aren't able to read out loud because of your schedule and/or commitments, try listening to the books on audio tape or in the car. It's the same concept, just someone else's voice. During an early study of brain recognition and imagery, it revealed that certain parts of the brain lit up when the same word was said, heard, and read repeatedly. Go a different way. We often wake up and go through our day without very much thought to the things we are doing. They are a routine for us and therefore don't challenge us to use our critical thinking or problem-solving skills. Try taking a new route to work or school. This doesn't just apply when driving. If you walk or jog, try doing this on a new route. Doing so not only forces us to stimulate our brains, but it's also a safety measure, especially for females who walk or jog alone. This particular activity is said to activate our cortex and hippocampus in our brains. What in the world is that, you ask? It is the want to know who takes a new route every single day on his way home? Bill Gates. Enough said, right? See, hear, taste, touch, and smell. There are numerous reports and studies that prove that we significantly use our senses to process data and promote a healthy connection between cognitive functions. Do activities that will allow you to be aware of using all your senses together. It's not that the senses don't already work simultaneously. They do, all day and every day. We just don't pay attention to the fact that they do. Back in 2008, there was a revolutionary study that showed that our intelligence can be improved. It was the first study of our kind, and it sent the scientific world into a good kind of frenzy. It literally changed the way we thought about intelligence. Don't be afraid to try something new. Step out of your comfort zone and try new things. Go somewhere you have never been before. Try a new food you wanted to taste. Start a new hobby or activity that will challenge you and not so predictable for you. Start a new hobby or activity that will challenge you and not be so predictable for you. For example, if you are a sports jock, try doing patchwork or something non-athletic completely opposite from who you are. When we try new things, our brain releases dopamine, which is also known as the motivator of neurotransmitters. It also promotes the healthy reproduction of new neurons. Become the master of your craft. We have already established that learning a new skill is imperative to building critical thinking skills. But what happens when we become a master of that skill? I'll tell you, we are no longer mentally stimulated. There is no brain benefit. So, what is the solution? Keep learning. Keep seeking new ways to improve. One suggestion is to take the skill you mastered to the next level if that's possible. If not, then try a similar skill with a higher complexity level. You could even try learning a new language, learn to play an instrument of some sort, and my favorite of all time, learn to play chess. Multiple country research studies have proven that playing chess improves our critical thinking and problem-solving abilities above most other activities. I've been really excited to talk about this. Chess is a game that people relate to brain intelligence at its very basic principles. The four main ways that chess helps us to think more critically are: chess requires strategy. In the game of chess, you have a board with 64 squares, equal chess pieces, and the same opportunity as your opponent to win. There are not just thousands, but millions of potential moves and game strategies. This is how you are able to plan your moves, adjust your strategy based on your opponent's move or within a matter of seconds. The changing of plans is what helps us to adjust and change ideas really quickly and helps to promote strategic thinking skills. Plan to win. One of the rules of chess is that certain pieces can only move in certain directions. This means that you already can envision possible outcomes with each move on both sides of the board. This increases our ability to plan not only in the game, but it applies to how we approach real-world problems as well. Enhanced aptitude for problem solving. The game of chess forces you to consider each and every possible move and outcome of not only yourself, but your opponent, as we mentioned. Use a logical reasoning for making a move of your own. Do you sacrifice a knight to get your opponent's king? Do you not take the king and wait for the queen? Can you see the correlation between chess and critical thinking yet? Brain muscles are increased. Our brain increases its abilities the more exercises that we give it. Playing chess on a regular basis will not only help you build your intelligence levels, but you will also have a more balanced life and be more in control of what happens around you. You will also notice that you are becoming better at work, at making decisions, at planning, and how to think things through with logic and reasoning. This has been Critical Thinking and Self-Confidence. How to use critical thinking techniques to build your self-confidence. Written by Stephen West. Narrated by Raymond Lawrence. Copyright 2018 by Stephen West. Production copyright by Stephen West.